Canadiens, Blackhawks, Rangers, 3 games to break down here today on PuckTime. I am Andrew, and today joining me, Mr. Andy Lang, to break down these games. We're going to have multiple different ways of looking: totals, sides, props, team totals as well. So lots of good stuff to look at. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Pretty good. Carm thinks he's so sneaky. Hey, you want to jump on the show on Monday? I was like, oh, sweet, loaded slate. No.
3 games.
3 games. But yeah, we got some decent props to look at on this slate. There's some ways to profit off this card tonight for sure.
Yeah, definitely not the most thrilling teams on tap tonight in the NHL here, and then probably the most thrilling team we'd say on paper is the New York Rangers, and well, they've lost 9 of their last 11 games. So we'll see what we can manage to find out of this 3 games. It's looking forward to breaking these 3 down, and let's start things off with Detroit and Buffalo. Typically, Andy, we look at these 2 teams, and they're rebuilding teams in the Atlantic Division. They're trying to build their way up, but the rebuilds certainly haven't really worked for them. One would argue Detroit would have made the playoffs if their captain didn't get injured towards the end of last season. But at least for Buffalo, they've had some scoring. They've had some decent, promising games. Detroit, I found, has been quite disappointing as far as their top player production. Do you have any props for us in this game, Red Wings and Sabres? Any players you're betting against or betting on between these 2 teams?
Well, I mean, both these teams are kind of bet against teams, right? Like this is not like a couple of juggernauts here. Yeah, there's a few, and I'll be honest, some of these props are pretty juicy today. So when I give these out, I'm just playing the trends, but you have to decide if it's worth it. What your juice tolerance is like. So I'll take Kolich over 1.5 shots on goal, over in 14 out of 18, over in 6 straight games. And this Detroit team is 28th in shots on goal allowed. It's kind of interesting, Andrew. In years past, I feel like some of the teams have really been bunched up as far as like defending shots on goal. Now the Sharks last year were like, they allowed like 4 or 5 more shots on goal than the next team. But this year it's kind of spread out. This is a Detroit team that gives up a lot of shots on goal. This guy's been good on this one. So I would look at him to go over shots. And then I'll take my boy Moritz to not have a point. He only has a point in 9 out of 27 games, 5 in a row without a point. And here's the key to this one, Andrew. Buffalo's 24th in goals allowed, but 10th in goals allowed to defenders. So the guys who are scoring are not the defenders when you go up against them. So nice little trend I have there. I love playing my guys to not have points. This year, the books have definitely gotten out in front of these. They're not giving me those minus 130s anymore. The ones last year, they were like minus 130, minus 140. They're like minus 190 this year. But I'll take. I would take a sprinkle on those 2 props in this game.
I like it. And Andy, you're right. It seems like this year don't get me wrong, there's still some sneaky guys you can add to your fantasy hockey team, or there's the pickups or some guys you've noticed that are playing much better. But as you mentioned, it seems like this year it's like, okay, these guys on this team are scoring, these guys aren't. So if you try and bet this guy not to get a point, the books know this year that they're not getting a point, versus in years past, you could kind of get a much better price on them. Both these teams have kind of struggled to score, and specifically Detroit. I mean, just 1 goal for them against the Avs, 1 goal against the Senators. I mean, if you're going to only score 1 against the Senators, that's a problem. 2 against the Bruins. And then the worst for them was when they scored 4 goals against Vancouver, they still lose. Like, hey, we scored 4 goals and Vancouver scored 5, right? So that can be very, very heartbreaking for a team that finally gets out and scores some goals, and they still struggle. But Detroit's lost 5 straight. The Sabres have lost a handful in a row. But here's the difference for me. The games the Sabres have lost recently have been against good teams that I expect them to lose against. So I'm not saying that we should be able to give them a pass by any means. But I mean, if we're talking about strength or weakness of a schedule, sometimes when you're kind of looking through a team's schedule, you can think, okay, that makes sense. They lost that one. That makes sense. They lost that one. some of the losses that the Buffalo Sabres have had recently, I wasn't really overly shocked, Andy. You know, I just like saw them coming. I was like, okay, yeah, they played Winnipeg, they played the Avalanche. You know, the Islanders one shocked me a little bit here, but this is a spot here where I want to go against the Red Wings. I want to back the Sabres. And I understand people might say to me, look, they've lost 5 straight games, and only in 2 out of those 5 games that they lost, they allowed 4 goals. But you know where I'm going here. I love the plus money. I'm not laying chalk with either of these teams. I can get plus 110 tonight on the Buffalo Sabres to reach the magic number of 4. And that's what we're going to go with the team total over at home for the Buffalo Sabres over Detroit. And sometimes when a team is struggling defensively, I mentioned this in my Every Game on the Board video over the weekend with the New York Islanders. When a team is struggling defensively, sometimes they have to sacrifice defense to help create offense. And I kind of feel like that's going to be a thing for Detroit. They're thinking, whatever the hell we're doing right now in these low-scoring games, we're losing. Like, it doesn't matter if you lose 2-1 or if you lose 5-4, you still lost by 1 goal. So I think that after so many short, under losses, we're going to start to see that. And it's kind of funny, Andy, a lot of people talk about baseball as like, especially with sport like baseball, where it's like a business, right? You're playing for your next contract. So your team might be out of the playoffs after the first month of the season, and you're playing 160 games. You're playing for yourself. Well, one thing someone told me one time, actually in like the hockey industry was like, these guys on bad teams, it's one thing to be on a bad team that's low scoring and losing, but at least if you're on a high scoring team and losing, you're putting up numbers. You're putting up stats, right, for a future contract negotiation to tell your agent, hey, look, I have this many goals. If you're playing poorly, losing, and you're only scoring 1 or 2 goals, what the hell are you even doing? So this is a battle between 2 crappy teams in the Atlantic Division, but I think Buffalo will get to 4. One of these teams gets to 4, and I think that Buffalo will go over that. And, Andy, would you say that as far as the odds are concerned, like you've been able to bet on guys not to have a point mostly on good teams lately? Like it's hard to do it these days on bad teams because the odds are so bad with it, or it's still worth it? Because I can only imagine, like if you take a third liner on the Avalanche to not get a point versus a third liner on the Red Wings, the odds are probably just like drastically different, right?
Yeah, a lot of them are. I haven't been playing nearly as many as I did last year, and these teams, I have to mention, 11 straight losses combined by these 2 teams. Like, oh my gosh. We cashed the client play yesterday on Nathan McKinnon under 1.5 points. He started off the season great, but yesterday they scored 4 goals in a 4-0 win, and he had none. So it's kind of a it's kind of a case by case basis, but yeah, like you really want to make sure that you're taking a bad team against a good defensive team. But even that, it can sometimes bite you. I took McKinnon under 1.5 points. I was playing against a great defensive team, and then the Avalanche win 4-0. Well, all right. Guess they weren't that great on defense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to make sure that they're going up against a good defensive team. That being said, I mentioned my guy Moritz to not have a point. Normally I wouldn't have mentioned it, but to just look at that and go, they're only allowing 1.8 points to defensemen. It's like, well, geez, if there's only 2 points coming from the entire defense, like the odds are kind of with you on that one. So it's just kind of a way to narrow it down. But yes, I would not be laying chalk on a team to win this one game. And to your point, Andrew, I years ago I did a half-hour documentary on the Fort Wayne Comets, the minor league team here, and they do a good job getting some guys into the NHL. The legend Colin Chalk came from there, but it was really interesting hearing them talk about, like, yeah, we're playing for jobs every single night. Like, if we're down 4-0 in the third period, we're not taking that period off. Like at the end of the year, at the end of your contract, they're like, well, how many goals did this guy score? It didn't matter the context of him,
Yes.
for like how many assists did he have? So yeah, when we see some of these some of these lower level teams, or even if you take a sport like NFL where you got teams that are sitting some of their players, some of their normal starters, these backups are coming in playing for a contract. They're looking to get a practice squad job for next to be, a backup somewhere else if their contract is up. So yeah, don't underestimate some of these guys' motivation. Now, do they have the talent to get the job done? Do they have the talent to score goals? That's another thing. But don't worry. I would not say like, oh, these backups are not motivated. It's far from it. Like they have their own motivation. It's you score a couple goals in garbage time, that could be the difference between you getting a contract next year and not. It really could. So that was an eye-opening experience for me in the industry.
As a Blue Jays fan, I used to always get mad at the All-Stars on our team when I was younger watching the Jays. They would always hit solo home runs. And I was like, why can't you do this when guys are on base? When we can actually win games. But for them, it's like, hey, there's a home run for my stat sheet, right? But it would just make me so mad and furious. It's like, get at least one guy on base first and then hit the home run. Don't just hit these solos. But yeah, that's actually really cool that so you did a documentary, like you were a part of your production company, was a part of the documentary?
It was amazing. Yeah, my production company did it, and we did something that you just don't ever see in minor league hockey. I was able to put lav mics on 4 of the players, and one of them got into a fight, and you could just hear everything that they're saying and all the punches, and it was amazing. Guy was like running his mouth about the other. He was like, "Oh, you're gonna bring your brother in?" I didn't know the guy had a brother on the ice. Like, "You're gonna bring your brother in to get your back? Can't fight on your own." Like.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
it was very cool. I got to spend the entire day with Colin Chalk and all those other guys. So it was very, very cool. It was a cool day.
Let's move on to the Chicago Blackhawks and New York Rangers here. First and foremost, though, I want to thank everybody for being here with us live in the live chat on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, wherever you're watching. Also, you guys that are watching afterwards, we love all the comments, and it's a smaller slate today. We're going to try and do our best to give you guys some picks, some props, some thoughts on all these games, but I love how active you guys are being right now in the live chat. But Andy, we talk about New York being the best team on paper as far as today's 3 games are concerned. We're talking about Detroit, Buffalo, Montreal, Anaheim, Chicago, and New York. Yeah, I mean, one might argue that New York is probably the best team on paper here. And, I'm going to say this. A lot of times people say that first game back at home after a road trip is a fade. Last game of a road trip is a fade. Second half of a back-to-back is a fade. Well, I think all of those are circumstantial based on if it was a successful front end of the back-to-back, if it was a successful first part of the road trip, if it was a successful road trip, then you fade the team first game back at home. I think it definitely works better for us here in this situation if we want to try and find something to bet on with this New York Rangers team. The fact that they lost yesterday's game, and this is the thing. This Blackhawks team has not been playing well defensively. They're not getting the production that they should be getting. And this is the thing. Based on what I saw yesterday with the New York Rangers having the lead, blowing it, giving up as many goals as they did, their goaltender just signed a massive contract right after Trouba, their contract, or their captain, just got moved away from the team. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Moral of the story, Andy, I do not want to be involved in the Rangers game for 60 minutes. I've been joking around about Carmine playing a lot of these 20-minute bets. I'm turning like upwards of a minus 250 into a plus 120. First period, 3-way line for the New York Rangers. We'll try and get in and out in one period. This is going to, they've been motivated for over a week and a half now. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys this should be a motivated spot because they should have been motivated this week, last week, week before that. These guys should always be motivated. But I like this first period play because Rangers had the lead yesterday against Seattle. They blow it. And now they get the instant opportunity against a weaker team to get right back on track. So how do you approach a team like this, Andy, with the Rangers that are certainly underachieving? And they just traded away their captain for pretty much a bag of pucks and some Gatorade. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on with this team, but they get the chance to play a weak team tonight.
I mean, the Blackhawks stink. There's your analysis. They have 8 goals in their last 6 road games. Like, I would look at team totals under on this Blackhawks team. I know the Rangers haven't been playing their best, but they at least have a couple of wins in their last 4 games. The only prop that I would really look at in this one, and it's going to sound like a weird one, but Connor Bedard under his shots on goal. Have you noticed he's fallen off an absolute cliff? He went over this total in 10 out of the first 14 games of the season. He's now under in 11 out of 13 games. And Andrew, he has 4 games out of the last 8 where he registered 0 shots on goal, nothing getting to the net in some of those games. Now, the Rangers give up plenty of shots on goal. They're 29th. They're giving up about 32 shots on goal, a game. But I don't know, man. Connor Bedard he's getting some shot attempts. Like, he had like 7 shot attempts the other night. None of them got to the goal, but it's just for whatever reason the books have not come off this 2.5 number. I get it. It's Connor Bedard. It's a big name. Who's taking unders on Connor Bedard? But I think I am. I think I'm going to be taking it. But I would look at Blackhawks team total under. They're not scoring even at home. Like, they're 2 against Winnipeg, 2 against Boston, 3 against Columbus. They're just really, really struggling to get shots on goal. They're struggling to get points. So I like your assessment of the 20-minute bet. But full game, I'm looking at Blackhawks team total under and Bedard under shots.
I like that Bedard one. I'd actually feel more confident in him to score a goal tonight than him to go over his shot number because he's been so picky. I feel like he's had to act like a playmaker more these days than a goal scorer. There was a kind of I wouldn't say viral clip, but all these hockey social accounts were posting a couple of days ago, Andy, they were trailing in a game. So he goes down the ice, he dekes out like 2 or 3 players, like these spectacular moves, passes it over to Bertuzzi. And instead of doing something special, Bertuzzi wraps it around the boards with a shot, dumps it in. It actually makes its way all the way around the boards and out of their end. And it's like, this is what Bedard has to deal with right now. People are saying Bedard's going through a slump. He just dangled through 3 guys, passed it to somebody else, and they shot it around the boards and it left the offensive zone. This is what he's dealing with. So, there's going to be either 2 options. He remains a playmaker, or he just turns into that mode where he's like, I'll do everything on my own and try and score. Hopefully for your under, he continues to try and be a playmaker. Because hockey is not a sport where like basketball, where you can just wake up and be like, I'm going to go drop 40 tonight. Like, you really just can't. If your teammates aren't helping you, it's very difficult.
It's like the Wembanyama kind of situation. Like, you have to be atrocious to get this draft pick. Like, that's what people don't realize. Like, when it's like, well, they haven't built a team around Wembanyama. It's like, well, yeah, they had to be the worst team in the league to get that pick. And it's the same. Like, the reason they got Connor Bedard was because they were awful. It's just, something that it just takes time. And you're right. Like, at least with basketball, like your superstar can be out out on the floor 3/4 of the game. There's only so much, Bedard can do on this one. So, yeah, and it's interesting, Andrew. You brought up the points. I think the odds are telling you kind of an interesting story. Like, over 2.5 shots on goal is minus 115. You can take the under at plus money, but he's minus 128 to have a point. So,
Right.
Like, the books are kind of telling you, we think it's more likely he has a point rather than he gets 3 clean shots to the net and on goal. So, sometimes those odds do tell you a story.
And a lot of times they're right, and they know what's going on with Bedard right now. And I hate to see it, but he is struggling. All right, I'm going to jump into just 2 props that I like on today's small slate. Just 3 games, but 2 props here. The first one is going to be Lane Hudson from the Montreal Canadiens to record an assist. The best price I saw out there was plus 106 here on this one. So it's a short minus price for him to record a point, right? The guy doesn't have a goal this season. He has not scored a goal. So what would you rather? Lay a little bit of juice on the guy for the slight chance he gets his first goal of the year, or just take the plus 106 on him to get an assist? Number 1, he has an assist in 6 straight games as a rookie. Number 2, they finally moved him to the power play one, the first power play unit. He was coming out there on the power play with about 45 seconds left every single time. The Canadiens finally moved Matheson off the PP1. Lane Hutson moves to the power play one, and he's getting all kinds more chances. And the third reason is Patrick Laine being back on the Canadiens creates plenty more options for Hutson to pass to. And one of his assists in the last 2 games was a direct pass to Patrick Laine, and he scored a goal there. So plus 106, Lane Hutson tonight against the Anaheim Ducks, who, let's be honest, they're nothing of a great defense by any means. We'll take him to get an assist. And then Ryan Donato, we're definitely not taking him to get a point by any means, because the Blackhawks, well, they can't score by any means, but he's a shooter, and he's a shooter on the road. Over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 130, 7 of his last 8 away games. And this year in the NHL, I've been looking a lot at the road-home splits. And we talk about these teams overall and players overall, how they fare at home versus how they fare on the road. And certain matchups at home benefit certain teams and players, and certain matchups on the road will benefit certain teams and players. So Ryan Donato, plus 130. We got a plus 106. We got a plus 130. Small slate of games tonight in the NHL, but it's going to be just one best bet up for me so far in the NHL. If I add anything else, it'll be closer to 4 p.m. Eastern time. Looking like a big play is going to be out, though, for Tuesday in the NHL, so watch out for a 5% play. Andy, those are just 2 props for me in the NHL. And I'll get your thoughts on this before we go to our last game here. I love when you see a chalk on a guy to get a point, and then the plus 105 or 110 for him to get an assist when they don't score. Like that was happening with Devon Toews for the Avalanche. He plays with Cale Makar. He never scores goals. And he'd be like minus 120 for a point and like plus 100 for an assist. I'm willing to take that risk that I'm watching the game when he scores a goal right in front of me. I'll be honest, I'm a Canadiens fan. If Hudson scores a goal, first goal of the year, I'm still going to smile. But the fact is, I'm going to take the plus 106 over the minus 110 to hit. You know what I mean? Like, and you see this all the time.
Yeah, you do. You have to be consistent with it, though. That's the thing. Like, you can't just pick and choose games with that. Like, you have to play like 10 in a row and hope that you're hitting on 6 or 7 of those. I'm with you though. Those situations do come up every once in a while. It's not a ton, but yeah, when you can dial in a guy that's just not scoring goals. Another. Well, I will tell you, Jake Neighbors for the Blues. That's the opposite. Like he never has assists. Because he's just shooting. So if he does get an assist, it's definitely like a pretty lucky like oh, I passed it to one guy and one guy made an amazing pass across the ice. That's how he hit it. So yeah, there are definitely situations out there where you look at it. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so the Ducks and the Canadiens, we've talked about all show how there aren't the most thrilling matchups on Monday night slate. If you aren't a fan of one of the teams like I am, you probably aren't tuning in to this game by any means. But Anaheim heads out on a East Coast road trip. They had 4 straight road games, Andy. Quite a bit of travel here for this one, but of course it is just the first game of the road trip. Canadian viewers, this will be on Prime Monday Night Hockey, and I will say, it's been really nice to watch. The production crew that Prime has brought, it's been a lot better than some of the coverage that they're getting on the main network. So I'm really enjoying it, and hopefully we get somewhat of a good game here, Andy. But my best bet's going to be in this game for the show, so I'll go last here. Is there anything that you like in this one as far as points, player props, Ducks or Habs? Tell me something good about the Habs tonight. Anything you like from my guys?
Well, let's. All right, I promise I'll find one here. I do like Gallagher. Okay, let's do Gallagher. How about that? Gallagher over 1.5 shots on goal. He's gone over in 4 straight, and Anaheim is last in league in shots on goal allowed. They're last against this position, so it's minus 160. So it's a little bit juicy, but again, I think I'm okay with laying it. I mean, they're giving up 33.2 shots on goal. It's like crazy. And 23.9 of them are coming from the forwards. So, yeah, that's one I would look at. Here's another one that you and I talked about off air, but I think we should talk about it now, and that's Kirby Dach. This is one of those where you say like, well, minus 200. Like you would never lay minus 200. Can you talk about Kirby Doc and what's going on with him, because he's minus 186 to not have a point. He's at a point in only 6 out of 27 games. So it's like, so when is minus 200 a decent price to lay? When you're hitting it at a 78% rate, that's when it's good to talk about. So can you talk about the injury he's going through, what you've seen? Because I don't think there's a lot of people that understand this.
Andy, it's been so frustrating. Sometimes, a lot of times as a sports bettor, being a fan of a team actually can blind your opinions, right? Can hurt you. But sometimes it can definitely help you by being in touch with a certain team. And look, I've listened to so many post-game radio shows, so many podcasts, so many interviews about this team. Every single media personality is talking about this guy. Every single media personality has something negative to say about this guy. And it went from give him time to I'm tired of giving this guy time. I'm tired of giving this guy time. And it just like one day a switch just flipped where, yes, you're coming off an MCL and ACL tear. It can be hard coming off any injuries. And I know that he's no superstar by any means, but look, he didn't miss a full season just like Kirby Doc did, but Patrick Laine just missed 3 months. He hadn't played a full hockey game in 8 months, and he scored a goal in both of his first 2 games back. I'm not saying that Kirby Doc is Patrick Laine, but I feel like it kind of probably makes Doc feel even worse when he looks at Laine come back and go top corner in back-to-back games. But it's very difficult. Here's one thing I'll say is that they've tried to move him up and down lineup, second line, third line, fourth line. I think what you should do is take a look at who is playing on the second line for teams that are playing against the Canadiens and take them to get a point or over shots on goal. Because not only is he not scoring, Andy, he is a league worst plus minus, team worst and league worst plus minus, meaning that he's taking penalties and he's on the ice a hell of a lot more for goals against than he is for goals for. Some hockey nerds will tell you that plus minus doesn't matter because, you could be completely not at fault, Andy, and then I made the turnover, but it looks bad on your plus minus. You know what I mean? Which does make sense. But at the same time, if you're not going to be scoring, you better be playing some pretty good defense. So, Andy, you have my complete blessing to keep making money betting against this guy, because even if he gets a point tonight, he's probably going to go 7 more games, and he just got bumped off the power play 1 unit, which was about time. And it's kind of a fun fact before I throw it back to you. 265 games straight for Martin St. Louis, the head coach of the Canadiens, where he hadn't had a fully healthy roster. And so some people were saying, Andy, that there weren't many healthy players up in the press box that they could replace Doc with. So he had no threat. He was comfortable. He could have the worst game of his life, but no guy is up there healthy to come down. Well, since Laine came back, he's taken his spot on the power play 1 unit. So yes, keep betting against Doc. Keep betting against some of these guys that are just not getting the job done. Anybody on the Ducks you like here?
Well, just to throw in, he's down to 14 minutes and 30 seconds of ice time average in his last 7 games. You just see his minutes coming down. And that's another key thing that I look at when you're playing these guys to not have points. You got a guy that's playing 21 minutes compared to a guy that's playing 14 minutes and 30 seconds. That's a lot of shifts where you're not out there, getting involved in anything. So, I can do my best bet here because my best bet is on an Anaheim Duck. All right, my guy Olin Zellweger has been a cash cow at over 1.5 shots on goal. Like, this guy has been going over, and I love the number 1.5. I love taking guys just to have 2 shots. Andrew, you've gone over 14 out of 15 games on this. I wake up this morning, darn it, they moved it to 2.5. What do we always say? As soon as the books move that line, you take the under. My best bet is Zellweger under. Every time I see the books run the same line out there all the time, and then all of a sudden they move it up 1, it's a recipe for disaster. So I think people are going to see that he's gone over shots on goal a bunch. No, I'll zig when everyone's zagging, and I'll go back to to 2.5. I hope he goes under a bunch more games and then they move it back down to 1.5 because he's been a cash cow for myself and for clients. But for tonight, at 2.5, it's under.
That's awesome. It's just great. I mean, some of these guys will land on exactly 2 or land on exactly 3, and then they move to 3.5 and you go under. So great eyes there. Guys, I look forward to seeing you cash this ticket, Andy, and then go back to betting his overs when they change it back. So great stuff. Good eyes. Always love talking props with you. And Andy has a same game parlay package up and available. It's a great game tonight in the NFL. Make sure you guys grab that or take advantage of any of the great deals we have for the holiday season for December here at WagerTalk.com. Andy doing multiple sports right now, UFC, college, of course, NBA props. And man, I've been loving following these NBA props, Andy, but let's make some money tonight in this ugly slate in the NHL. As far as I'm concerned, looks like it's going to be just one play for me in the NHL. We'll see if I add any more. But a 5% play going up this afternoon for tomorrow's busy Tuesday slate. A reminder, guys, we will have no show on Wednesday and no show on Friday this week. So we'll have some potentially, some single game videos and stuff like that out. But when there aren't that many games, we just will not feel forced to do a show with just a small amount of games. But my best bet for today's show, another first period wager, over 1.5 goals in the first period, -130 Habs and Ducks. We've had a lot of success with these first period plays. And I'll tell you, it has not been going well for the Ducks lately. They have been getting crushed, and people have been scoring on them early and often. They're taking the first game of their road trip here all the way out east to the Montreal Canadiens. And look, the Habs, they've been having success in the first periods lately. They have not lost a first period in 4 of the last 5 games. In fact, they've scored at least 1 goal in 3 of the last 4 games. I think when 2 quote-unquote bad teams get together that are both frustrated, especially a team like Anaheim, we see fireworks, and we see fireworks early. I like this price here of -130. Let's get 2 goals, guys, and cash this ticket. Don't forget about Owen Zellweger under 2.5 shots on goal, says Andy Lang. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Puck Time.